kiddos! So we are going to read chapter 3 today of The Lemonade War. Now remember, we're seeing Evan and Jesse, and they're not getting along very well, right? Evan's upset because Jesse's going to be in his class. Jesse's upset because Evan's upset that she's going to be in his class, and she doesn't understand why he's upset. She thinks this is going to be great, and he's mad because his little sister, who is probably smarter than him, is going to be in his class and he's not looking forward to it. So today the question that I'm going to ask you while we're reading is, what advice would you give Evan about how to have a better relationship with Jesse, or how to get along with Jesse? We've all gotten into arguments before, either with our own siblings or with friends. And so if you're friends with Evan and Evan came up to you and said, hey man, Jesse and I are not getting along, what should I do? What would you tell Evan? What advice would you give him so that he can get along with his sister? So I am on page 27. We are on joint venture, and here is our definition for today. It says joint venture, noun. Two or more people joining forces to sell a certain amount of goods or to work on a single project. When the goods are sold or the project is finished, the joint venture ends. So it's when two people, okay, or more, come together to do one thing. So think about like a group project, okay? Think about all the group projects that we've had in class. We come together to do one thing, and then when that project is done, the group doesn't exist anymore, right? We break the group up. It's called a joint venture. So let's see what the joint venture is today in chapter 3. And remember, you're looking for how Evan and Jesse are struggling to get along and what advice you would give Evan so that they can get along better. Remember, though, this ends with Evan, or chapter 2 ended with Scott and Evan going off to sell lemonade and Jesse getting really upset about it. Your sister is really... Shut up, said Evan. Huh? Just shut up. She's okay. She doesn't... Look, she's okay, so just shut up. Yeah, okay, said Scott, holding up his free hand to show that he meant peace. Evan was getting abused on both sides. The heavy cooler was banging against his leg inside with every step, and the plastic chairs were scraping against his outside leg. Bruised and bloodied, he thought to himself, all for the fun of hanging out with Scott Spencer. Why couldn't Jack have been home, or Ryan? And why did Adam have to be on the Cape this week? It stunk. How far are we walking? Grunted Scott. Just to the corner. Evan watched as drops of sweat fell off his face and landed on the hot sidewalk. We should have stayed in the driveway. It was shaded. The corner's better, trust me, said Evan. He remembered when Jesse had said the same words to him last summer. They were setting up a lemonade stand together, and Evan had been grumbling about dragging his cooler across the street and down 2 houses, just like Scott. But Jesse had insisted. There's sidewalk on this side, she'd say. So we'll get the foot traffic coming in both directions, and people in cars coming around the curve will have time to see us and slow down. Besides, there are a bunch of little kids on the side street, and their mothers don't want them crossing Damon Road. The corner's better, trust me. And she was right. They made a ton of money that afternoon. It took 10 seconds to set up the lemonade stand. Evan unfolded the chairs and sat one on each side of the cooler. Scott tilted the sign toward the street for maximum effect. Then they both sat down. Man, it is hot, said Evan. He took off his baseball cap, wiped the sweat from his face, and wiped the sweat from his face with his shirt. Then he grabbed an ice cube from the cooler, balanced it on his head, and stuck his cap back on. Yeah, said Scott, I'm thirsty. He reached into the paper bag and pulled out a cup. It was one of those large red plastic cups that vendor used at professional baseball games. Then Scott took one of the pitchers from the cooler and filled the cup to the brim with lemonade. Hey, not so much, said Evan, pouring himself a cup too, but only partway. He glugged down half his drink. Not bad, he thought, though he noticed a dead fruit fly floating on the top. His mom had been battling a mad fruit fly infestation ever since the weather had turned really warm. You ever see those fruit flies in your house, kiddos? They're little itty bitty tiny, and they're super hard to get rid of. Once you get fruit flies, I mean, you basically have to wait until it gets cold to get rid of them. They're awful. The kitchen sink area where they kept the fruit bowl was dotted with tiny, feathery fruit fly corpses. Scott drained his cup and tossed it on the ground. Ah, he said, satisfied. That was good. I'm gonna have another. Evan reached for the trashed cup and stowed it under his seat. No, come on, Scott. You're gonna drink all of our profits if you do that. He stretched his legs out by putting his feet on top of the cooler. Just chill. I'm gonna chill by having another cup, said Scott. There it was, that mean bite in Scott's voice. Evan's shoulders tensed. Move your feet, said Scott. It's hot out here. Dude, Evan sat up expectantly and looked down the street. Hey, here comes our first customer. Their argument got saved, right, by someone coming to buy some lemonade. A mother pushing a double stroller came into view. At the same time, one of the kindergartners from down the street rode her bike up, noticed the sign, and quickly pedaled back to her house. What do you think that she went to go get? Within 5 minutes, there was a small crowd of neighborhood kids and pedestrians buying lemonade from the stand. Evan let Scott handle all the money while he took care of the pouring and the sweet talk. You see sweet talks in quotation marks there. That's what his mother called it when a salesperson chatted her up. Trust me, she had once told Evan and Jesse, buying something is only half about getting something. Mrs. Tresky knew about these things because she was a public relations consultant. She'd even written a booklet called 10 Bright Ideas to Light Up Your Sales for one of her clients. And Evan was like her. He was good at talking with people, even grown-ups. It was easy for him. So he kept the conversation flowing along with the lemonade. People hung around. Most of them bought a second cup before they left. Evan was so busy, he almost didn't notice Jessie flying out of the garage on her bike, riding down the street toward town. Good riddance, he thought. But at the same time, he wondered, where was she going? During a lull in business, Evan walked all around the stand, picked up discarded plastic cups. Scott sat in his chair, jiggling the coins in his pocket. Man, we're gonna be rich, said Scott. I bet we made $5 already. I bet we made 10. How much you think we made? Evan shrugged. He looked at the stack of used cups in his hand and counted the rims. 14. They'd sold 14 cups so far, and each cup of lemonade cost 50 cents. Evan heard Mrs. DeFazio's voice in his ear. Mrs. DeFazio had been his 3rd grade teacher, and she'd done everything she could to help Evan with math. If 1 cup of lemonade sells for 50 cents and you sell 14 cups of lemonade, how much money have you made? Y'all do that one. Y'all work that word problem out and see if you can get it right. Word problems. Evan hated word problems. Who else hates word problems? And this one was impossible anyway. He was pretty sure the right equation was 14 times 50. But how was he supposed to solve that? That was double-digit multiplication. There was no way he could do a problem like that. And besides, some of these 14 people had bought refills but used the same cup. How many? Evan didn't know. Still, he knew they'd made a pretty good amount of money. That estimate was close enough for him. How much do you think we could make if we sold it all? Asked Scott. I don't know, said Evan. Maybe $20? That sounded high, even to him, but Evan was an optimist. When you are an optimist, it means that you always think on the bright side. You're a positive thinker. You try to see the good in things and not the bad in things. Do you really think? Both boys looked in the cooler. 3 pitchers were empty. They only had half a pitcher left. You were pouring the cups too full, said Scott. You should have poured less in each one. You're the one who brought the huge plastic cups. You could fit a gallon in one of those, said Evan. Besides, I wasn't going to be chintzy. They're paying a whole $50 for it. They deserve a full cup. And anyway, we can't just go home and make more. We can just go home and make more. My mom has tons of cans of lemonade in the freezer. So, go home and make more, said Scott. Oh yes, your majesty, oh high commander, your infiniteness. Why don't you go make it? That was sarcasm, right? Evan does not really think that Scott is your highness. 'Cause I'm chilling, said Scott, leaning back in his chair with a stupid grin on his face. Evan knew he was just joking, but this is exactly why he didn't like Scott. He was always thinking of himself, always looking for some way to come out on top. If they were playing knockout, Scott always came up with a new rule that helped him win. You guys know people like that? They always want to make the rules so that they win. But if it makes them lose, then they say it's not fair, right? We know people like that. If they were doing an assignment together, Scott always figured out how to divide it so that he had to do less work. The kid was a weasel. No two ways about it. But everyone else was out of town. Evan didn't want to spend the day alone, and Jesse was on his poop list, as Mom called it, when the dog did something he wasn't supposed to do. Evan might never play with Jesse again. So you know he's really upset, right? He's saying, I'm so mad at her, I may never even play with her again. Evan crossed the street and went into the house. He was surprised to find that there was no more cans of lemonade in the freezer. Wow, there'd been so many this morning. Luckily, there was a can of grape juice in the freezer and a bottle of ginger ale in the fridge. It'll work, he thought. People just want a cold drink. They don't care if it's lemonade. He mixed up the grape juice at the sink. The fruit flies were more out of control than ever, thanks to the lemonade the boys had dribbled all over the countertop. Evan swatted a couple, but most of them drifted out of his reach and settled on the fruit bowl. He wished his mother believed in chemical warfare, but for Mrs. Tresky, it was all natural or nothing. Usually nothing. When he went back outside to the lemonade stand, Evan noticed that the last pitcher was turned upside down on the cooler. Oh, come on, Scott. What happened? Scott drank it, right? And when you're drinking the lemonade, are you the one making money? What? It was hot, and you said we could always make more. Yeah, well, we didn't have as much in the house as I thought. I've got grape juice and ginger ale. I hate ginger ale, Scott said. I wouldn't give you a penny for it. It turned out that a lot of people felt the same way. Business was definitely slower. The day got hotter. The sun beat down on them so I can never say this word, ferociously. There we go. That it was easy to imagine the sidewalk cracking open and swallowing them whole. Fanning himself, Evan asked, "How much money do you really think we could make?" "I don't know," said Scott, pushing his baseball cap down over his eyes. "I mean, on a hot day like this," Evan said, silently adding the words, "or tomorrow. If we sold 8 pitchers of lemonade, what do you think we'd each make?" 8 pitchers. I don't know. Scott shook his head. His baseball cap face wagged back and forth. Too hot for math. And it's summer. Evan pulled the red pen out of his pocket and started to write on the palm of his hand. 8 times ? 8 times 50 divided by 2 ? So is Evan very strong at math? No. But who do we know that is really good at math? Jesse. All these equations? That didn't seem right. Jesse would know. She could do that math in a second. Evan capped the pen and jammed it into his pocket. "But I bet it's a lot," said Evan. "I bet on a hot day like this, we could actually make some real money in the lemonade business." "Yeah," said Scott. "Then we'd be rich. And I'd get an Xbox, the new one, with dual controls." "I'd get an iPod," said Evan. We got some geese, and they're being very loud. Hang on, they're almost over the house. We have a lake behind the house, and they like to get a little feisty. "I'd get an iPod," said Evan. He'd been saving for one for over a year. But every time he had some money put away, well, it just disappeared. Who else does that, right? You try to save money, but the moment you get money, you spend it. I'm bad at that. Like the $10 from Grandma. She'd even written in her card, "Here's a little something to help you get the music thing you want." But the money was gone. He treated Paul and Ryan to slices of pizza at Townhouse. It'd been fun. "That would be so great to listen to music whenever I want," said Evan. "I could tune you out," he added in his own head. They sat in silence, feeling the heat suck away every bit of their energy. Remember, like, this is a connection we can make to holes, right? when Stanley's out there digging in those holes every day, he talked about how it just like, it zapped you. It made you totally tired. Just being in the heat can make you tired. And now Evan's experiencing the same thing. Evan's not even digging a hole and he's already like, oh, I just can't. Evan was hatching a plan. The heat wave was supposed to last at least 5 days. If he and a friend, not Scott, set up a lemonade stand every day for 5 days, he definitely would have enough to buy an iPod. He imagined himself wearing it as he walked to school, wearing it on the playground. Hey, Megan, yeah, it's my iPod. Sweet, huh? Wearing it in class when the teacher droned on about fractions and percents. Nah, but it would be so cool. At least there would be one thing that didn't totally stink about going back to school. After 2 hours, they decided to call it quits. Sales had dropped off fast and then stopped altogether. Hey, did you notice something? Asked Evan, stacking the chairs. What? Said Scott. When we started the stand, most of our business came from that direction. He pointed down the street toward the curve in the road. But after an hour, not one person who walked past us from that direction bought a cup. Not one. They all said, no thanks, and kept on walking. Why do you think? Don't know, said Scott. Boy, you're a real go-getter, said Evan. You know that? Scott socked him on the chest, but Evan defended and knocked Scott's cap off. While Scott was scrambling for his hat, Evan said, just hang here for a minute, okay? And set off down the street. As soon as he rounded the curve, he knew why business had fallen off so badly. There was Jesse and Megan Moriarty from his class. They were standing inside a wooden booth, and their sign said it all. That looks a lot prettier than the sign that Evan and Scott made, huh? By the looks of it, their business was booming. Evan watched as Jesse accepted a fistful of dollar bills from a mother surrounded by kids. At that moment, Jesse looked up and saw him. Evan had a weird feeling, like he'd been caught cheating on a test. He wanted to run and hide somewhere. Instead, he froze. What would Jesse do? Evan didn't believe it. She sneered at him. She cocked her head to the side and gave him this little I'm so much better than you smile. And then, she waved the money in her hand at him. She waved it as if to say, look how much we've made selling lemonade. Bet you can't beat that. Evan turned on his heel and walked away. Behind him, he can hear Megan Moriarty laughing at him, clear as a bell. All right, kiddos. So we definitely have a rivalry set up, right? Just maybe the name of the book, because that's starting to kind of make some sense now. The Lemonade War. So what advice would you give Evan to help his relationship with Jesse? Okay, what would you tell him to do? Okay, I love you guys. I miss you guys. Remember, you've got 2 true or false questions and then that 1 open response. And today, you don't even have to use race. Okay, if you need help, let me know. I love you guys. I miss you guys, and I'll see y'all later.